This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Ron Rohde, Kentucky Afield's first host back in 1953. Now, I'm proud to present Charlie Baglin.
Anyone who loves to travel is well aware of Kentucky state parks. But when it comes to fishing, they are in many ways some of Kentucky's best-kept secrets. We go inside outdoors this week to explore what the Kentucky Department of Parks has to offer the angler. You want trophy bass? There's a park for that. Trout, striped bass, smallmouth, places where you can unplug and reconnect. There's a park for that. And the trip begins next on Kentucky Afield Radio.
Swimming has taken me around the world.
Olympic swimming gold medalist Rachel Comazar.
It's a thrill to swim for your country, but it's another to swim for your life. In a boating accident, that's what happens. It can happen to you. You could be hurt, dazed, unconscious. Being a good swimmer isn't good enough. When fun turns frantic, trust me, your life jacket is as good as gold.
Kentucky Fish and Wildlife reminds you, your life jacket's got your back and the backing of the best swimmers everywhere.
That fish weighed 10 pounds.
10. That's the magic word.
Honey, I hadn't been there 10 minutes.
If he says 10, he's lying. And he says 10 a lot.
You gotta be happy you married me.
I can hear it coming.
Admit it. I'm your perfect 10.
Honey, why don't you take 10?
10-fold.
Your Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife reminds you, fishing's not about math. It's about fun.
And fudge it a little if you need to.
Kentucky Fishing. Be honest.
It'll make a liar out of you.
This is Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglin, and we are going to talk to a couple of fellows today from the Kentucky Department of Parks. The slogan reads, "The nation's finest," and I do believe it. I am personally a product of Kentucky State Parks. I got my rearing at General Butler State Resort Park, where I was a lifeguard back in the 70s. It was a great place to work. The people came for states around to enjoy what I had right there in my hometown of Carrollton. And something else that General Butler State Resort Park was to me was where I learned how to fish. My grandfather, that no one will remember because he has been gone for many years, Bert Hill, when I seemed like 3 or 4, he was closer to 80, 3 or 4. He was an older man. But what I loved about him was that he loved nature. He liked raising a garden. He liked flowers. He liked taking me to Butler Park, to that small lake there, to teach me how to fish. We would dig up worms from the backyard, put them on a cane pole, toss them in, and I remember many a sunfish. I remember many bluegill. Every time I drive by that lake, even today, I'll still glance over to that spot, and I'll still see us there. That's how rooted I am to Kentucky State Parks, and I know that I am not alone in this. Today we are talking to Ron Vanover, who is the state naturalist with the Kentucky Department of Parks, and Jeff Roberts, who works for the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife as a conservation educator. But prior to that, and I mean immediately prior to that, was the state naturalist at Rough River Dam State Park, and loves to fish. So we are glad to have both of these fellows on to talk about, in earnest, Kentucky State Parks and fishing opportunities that are waiting there.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Department of Parks and fishing. How many parks are there around the state?
Well, there's 49 state parks in the Commonwealth, and with that, 17 are resorts, 20 are rec parks, 12 are historic sites, but we also have to think about Breaks Interstate Park we share with the Commonwealth of Virginia and the Pine Mountain State Scenic Trail.
Breaks Interstate Park. I've always been curious about that. Now's the best time to ask you. What about that park is Kentucky, and what about that park is truly Virginia?
Breaks Interstate Park was created jointly in 1954 by both the legislature of Kentucky and the legislature of Virginia. 2/3 of the land lies in Virginia. 1/3 lies in Kentucky. And with that, they have a governing body of a board of directors that oversees Breaks Interstate Park. But since some of the land falls in Kentucky, and our commissioner actually serves on that board, it's a special park on the Virginia, Pike County, Elkhorn City side park area.
Describe, what's the scenery there? We were set out to talk about fishing, but we're on breaks, and that's okay, because it is beautiful. If you haven't been there, I'm glad to know that it really is in the Kentucky system, too.
Sure.
Because it is something to see. What is that river there that it overlooks?
The Russell Fork of the Big Sandy River comes through there. We call it the Grand Canyon of the South. Something recently observed there were peregrine falcons on the cliff lines, and you can actually see from the Kentucky side, but you have to know where you're viewing from the Pine Mountain State Scenic Trail. So if you've never been there, while you're making a trip to the eastern part of the state and stay at Buckhorn or Jenny Wiley State Resort Parks, you can make a trip down there as well. I might add that I hope I'm not wrong in saying this, but in the little town of Breaks there is also, I think, a home to Dr. Ralph Stanley, the famous bluegrass musician. And the naturalist that's at Breaks Interstate Park happens to be a prodigy of Kentucky. I actually took him on his first hunting excursion when he was 9 years old. And he plays professional bluegrass music with Marty Rabin, and he's played with Dr. Ralph Stanley, and he happens to be the park naturalist there.
Breaks Interstate Park is a pretty good place to start our chat about fishing opportunities in Kentucky. I was thinking maybe we'd start in the west, but let's start in the east. There are tons of parks. It doesn't matter if it's a resort or if it's a rec park or historic site. Parks take pride in opportunities they have to get people outdoors and recreation. I understand a former naturalist, Kerry Tushner, told me that parks were preserve-oriented, just simply by nature, that part of their mission was to preserve natural beauty.
That is true. We have a lot of wonderful places in Kentucky, especially in our park system. We often say we're quite diversified, and there's a place for that. That happens to be our slogan, there's a place for that. So if you want to kayak or canoe, there's a state park for that. If you want to fish, there's a state park for that. If you want to enjoy bird watching, state park for that.
Fishing. Where do you fish at Breaks Interstate Park?
Well, the small lake that you see there is like a lot of the lakes throughout Kentucky that has a lot of sunfish and catfish, of course. And it also provides educational opportunities where the park naturalist can offer fishing events in the evening for families. You know, you warmed my heart earlier, Charlie, when you talked about your adventure at General Butler. It made my mind go back in time and think about my father and all the times I had. Don't want to choke up. But, you know, it was a part of great heritage for me. It was a great cultural experience. It was bonding time between me and my brothers and my family. I can remember catching bluegill till we were just about sick of catching bluegill. If it wasn't that, later in life, Dad had us on a small boat with a life preserve on and stretching a trot line across the Cumberland River about 12 miles above Cumberland Falls. And I remember about 1 or 2 in the morning one time, he called me Cotton Top, and he said, Cotton Top, did you hear that catfish? It's slapping the water. Let's go get it.
You didn't have white hair when you were a kid.
I sure did.
You really? That's amazing. Well, the Russell Fork, is that actually part of the park?
Well, it's part of the park. It actually goes right down the center because you've got Kentucky 1/3 on one side and 2/3 of the park on the other. I'd say that's about a 4,000-acre park. You come on down and eventually you get into the Leviza Fork of the Big Sandy, which actually puts you really, really close to Jenny Wiley. Of course, you've got Dewey Lake there, Charlie, which is the damming of Johns Creek. Johns Creek meanders 99 3/4 mile long, where it's dammed to make Dewey Lake. And I never knew this till recently, but it's my understanding the classification between a creek and a river is 100 miles.
I've understood that, too. Don't know that it's laid out in statute any place, but that's what I've come to understand.
Yeah.
100 miles makes a river, although there are creeks that are longer than 100 miles and rivers that are shorter than.
Yes.
So it makes you wonder.
But there's a lot of fishing opportunities coming in the Big Sandy. I used to fish the Big Sandy River when I was there and catch a lot of catfish and sunfish. Of course, as you go up, keep traveling on toward the Ohio River, where the two forks come together, you've got the Tug and the Leviza. comes together in Louisa, Kentucky.
Can we talk generally about fishing opportunities that are standout, that separate themselves from the rest of the parks? I know Greenbow Lake State Park is a trophy bass fishery. So are there great places that you can think of? Fish for trout, fish for muskie, fish for trophy bass. Ron Vanover from the Department of Parks, the state naturalist, and Jeff Roberts are our guest. We'll be back in a minute. When we come back in the next segment, I want to do some specifics. Where are the best places to go in the state park system around the state for the species we want to catch? My name is Charlie Baglin, and this is Kentucky Afield Radio. You've heard it said that fishing is what makes Kentucky a keeper, and fishing opportunities in Kentucky state parks certainly a part of that. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglin. We are talking this hour with Jeff Roberts, who was at Rough River Dam for quite a while as the naturalist and quite the fisherman, and Ron Vanover, who is the state naturalist for the Kentucky Department of Parks.
You know, you warmed my heart earlier, Charlie, when you talked about your adventure at General Butler. It made my mind go back in time and think about my father and all the times I had. Don't want to choke up. But, you know, it was a part of great heritage for me. It was a great cultural experience. It was bonding time between me and my brothers and my family. I can remember catching bluegill till we were just about sick of catching bluegill. If it wasn't that, later in life, Dad had us on a small boat stretching a trot line across the Cumberland River about 12 miles above Cumberland Falls. And I remember about 1 or 2 in the morning one time, he called me Cotton Top, and he said, Cotton Top, did you hear that catfish? It's slapping the water. Let's go get it.
You didn't have white hair when you were a kid.
I sure did.
You really? That's amazing. Ron has thick, white, flowing hair, David Crosby-like, Moses-like. So where are we, Ron, on this river trip here in far eastern Kentucky?
You come on down, and eventually you get into the Louisa Fork of the Big Sandy, which actually puts you really, really close to Jenny Wiley. Of course, you've got Dewey Lake there, Charlie, which is the damming of Johns Creek. Johns Creek meanders 99 3/4 mile long, where it's dammed to make Dewey Lake. But there's a lot of fishing opportunities coming in the Big Sandy. I used to fish the Big Sandy River when I was there and catch a lot of catfish and sunfish. Of course, as you go up, keep traveling on toward the Ohio River, where the two forks come together, you've got the Tug and the Louisa comes together in Louisa, Kentucky. It goes on up to Catlettsburg into the Ohio, but I think a lot of people, they catch a lot of sauger in that area.
Can we talk generally about fishing opportunities that are standout, that separate themselves maybe from the rest of the parks? I know Greenbow Lake State Park is a trophy bass fishery. So are there great places that you can think of that you can go to a state park, great place to go, well managed, well taken care of, fish for trout, fish for muskie, fish for trophy bass?
Sure. As far as species specific, we have to talk about Dale Hollow and the smallmouth fishery that Dale Hollow has. As most people, well, maybe they don't all know or remember, but the world record smallmouth bass was taken from Kentucky waters out of Dale Hollow. And of course, that's a lake that we share with Tennessee, but the state park is there and provides opportunities to launch a boat and to and have excellent, what I would consider honestly world-class smallmouth fishing at Dale Hollow. As far as muskie goes, if we're talking about state parks, Green River Lake has a lot of good-sized to trophy muskie in it. It's got it's not a resort park, but it does have a state marina and multiple boat ramps. I think that as far as Green River Lake goes in itself, it's probably underrated for largemouth and smallmouth bass too. I would consider it an underrated fishery and a fishery that's really kind of come on in recent years. It's kind of, lakes have upswings and they kind of have peaks, and I would say that right now Green is definitely in one of its peaks as far as fishing goes. Walleye, there's a lot of walleye, good walleye fishing in Green River. The walleye also make a run in No Lynn Lake, and there's also a state park not a resort park, but a state park with launching opportunities at no end as well.
Would you include striped bass at Lake Cumberland?
Yes. Striper fishing in Cumberland is, I would consider that world class as well.
Lake Barkley for crappie, of course. These, I'll just call them mega lakes. Cumberland, Kentucky Lake, and Lake Barkley. Those are big boys. If we want to talk about just the smaller impoundments, or Tigard's Creek, or the rivers that happen to run through there, a little smaller, a little cozier place to nestle into the woods or out in a john boat and fish. That's kind of what I'd like to dwell on here for a little bit.
Right, and the lakes you mentioned, Kentucky Lake, Barkley, Cumberland, those are world-class fisheries, and most people have heard of them. They know about them. But there are certainly other opportunities in state parks. There's actually, if you go on our website and you select that you would like to partake in some fishing in a state park, you're going to get 31 results. There are 31 state parks that have opportunities for fishing. Now, some of those are going to be the big boys. Some of those are going to be Kentucky and Barkley. But a lot of them are going to be smaller lakes where they're, let's say, trolling motor only. Or maybe there's not even a boat ramp, but there's excellent opportunities for bank fishing. So there's definitely plenty of opportunities with state parks for some more, I guess, intimate kind of fishing, intimate settings, a little kind of off the beaten path, kind of off the grid, which I think is really underrated personally. I really like to kind of get away from the pleasure boaters, maybe escape, if you will, and there's definitely plenty of opportunities for that.
Lakes, and I work with the Kentucky Afield Radio and TV show. They do a lot of fishing. I see these fellas walk up and down the hall, and I'll always hear about, we're going to Ken Lake this week. We're going to Barkley. We're going to Cumberland. We're going anywhere but Buckhorn Lake. They're going anywhere but General Butler State Resort Park. And I don't know why, because these, to me, are the little quaint, cozy places where you can just sit down and have the time of your life with a cane pole if you wanted to. Well, I mentioned Buckhorn Lake. Who can talk about what surrounds Buckhorn Lake for the local fishermen?
Well, with Buckhorn Lake itself, it does mimic in some respects, when I was on Buckhorn Lake, Dewey Lake, which is not far. I would say Buckhorn Lake's probably 1,100 acres. It'll have some of the same species of fish that you would find at Dewey, whether it be catfish or sunfish, bass. Bass in some areas of Dewey has been quite good. It's my understanding it has been at Buckhorn, too. As far as things to do in and around that region, just remember, you're in elk country, Charlie. You've got plenty of elk over in that area. If I may say, Buckhorn and Jenny Wiley both offer opportunities for elk viewing tours. You can visit parks.ky.gov for the upcoming season on those. Something I enjoy, if I may throw out there, is, when I go to Cumberland Falls State Park, there's a lot of creeks in that area, Charlie. Indian Creek traverses through that area. You get into the southern part of McQuarrie, you've got Rock Creek, bass fishing. And just because the state park may not have a small creek meandering through it, if you look on a map, there's always going to be one nearby. And I know one of the things I enjoyed when I go home to visit is I sometimes take my children creek fishing, and we wade certain aspects of the creeks, which are mostly surrounded in that area by the U.S. Forest Service.
Doesn't get any better than creek fishing.
Absolutely.
That's where you can get a snag and not mind a bit.
Right. I remember catching red eyes all the time. Of course, I didn't realize it was a rock bass till I got into college, but boy, they can fight. And we do catch and release, and just a great event to creek fish with your kid.
Did one of you say 33 lakes, 33 parks with fishing opportunities? 31. I did a little Baglin survey, and I counted up. If you wanted to know state resort parks or state parks in Kentucky that offered water, all you have to do is look at the name. 2/3 of them have something referencing water in the name. Lake Cumberland, Lake Barkley, Kentucky Lake, Cumberland Falls, Kentucky Dam Village. Mm-hmm. It's right there. It's saying, it's just screaming, come take advantage of our water. Some of these you can take your boat to them. Some of them you can't. Some of them maybe will have paddle boats, and you can rent one of those and paddle about, but not all. Can you, off the top of your head, tell me the general policies on putting your personal boat in state park water?
You got to follow the guidelines set up by the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources. All of our policies dealing with the water, we take the lead as parks from the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources, and also from the governing body of water if it's involving U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, etc. If you look at Mill Creek Lake, which I'm fond of Mill Creek Lake, I served as park manager at Natural Bridge State Resort Park for about 6 years. There's some great fishing in that lake, but I, at that time, rarely saw anybody on the water fishing it. We find some people, creek fishing it. You could canoe it, kayak it. There's also another small lake that we use for educational purposes at that particular park. We called it the holding pond because when the railroad came through there in the late 1800s, that's what it was used for, was to fill up the old steam engines. They would shock the fish, and we would immediately take those all the way up to Mill Creek Lake. And I remember one time when we shocked that little holding pond, we got over 20 fish, bass, that weighed over 5 pounds apiece, and took them all up there and emptied them into Mill Creek.
We will explore parks in central Kentucky as we continue to move west. You like to fish? There's a park for that. In fact, there are dozens. Kentucky State Parks. More in a minute. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. Now let's see what's biting where with this week's fishing report.
This is Jeff Crosby with the Central District Fishing Report. Lake temperatures in the area are running in the low 80s. Black bass are being caught at many of our area lakes, such as Taylorsville, Harrington, and Gibbs Creek lakes. Try topwater lures in early morning and late evening hours, as well as fishing crankbaits or swim jigs during daytime hours. Also, several fish are being caught at night with the aid of a black light, fishing soft plastics around shoreline cover. Don't forget about the channel catfish that are stocked at many of our department-owned lakes, such as Elmer, Beaver, and McNeely lakes. These fish are stocked annually. These fish can be caught on a wide variety of lures, such as night crawlers, chicken livers, or any type of stink bait product. So grab a pole and hope to see you on the water.
This is Rob Rold in the Northwestern Fishery District with an update on some fishing opportunities in our area. Both of our major reservoirs, Rough River Lake and Nolan River Lake, are at summer pool, holding steady. Surface temperatures are in the mid to upper 80s. At Nolan, white bass are still in the jumps, and these jumps are often mixed with black bass as well. Fish early in the morning, late in the day, or if it's a cloudy day, sometimes they'll last a little longer. Use casting spoons to cast into the feeding schools, or you can use a surface-type noise-making bait such as blade or prop baits. Walleye are being picked up, a few, by trolling some of the long main lake points. Troll a chartreuse, shad, or fire tiger colored crankbait at around the 10-12 foot range. That's an update from the Northwestern Fishery District. Please remember, always be safe on the water and wear your PFDs.
In western Kentucky, down on Kentucky and Barkley Lakes, we're in the slow period of summertime fishing. Bass fishermen are out on the ledges doing that slow fishing with jigs and worms on the bottom. Sometimes you'll find the bass just off the ledges. Sometimes you'll find them up on top, just kind of depending on how much current's going through the reservoir. But it's slow fishing for this time of year. You just got to catch the day right. They are catching a few bass up shallow in the evening. They're much smaller bass, but it's a lot of fun fishing when you find them shad minnows that are working around some brush tops. You can cast in there and probably pull you out some smaller sized largemouth bass. Another big thing is bow fishing for silver carp. We need to get rid of the silver carp. Any given night when they're down there hunting for those things, shooting them, hear a lot of success. Well, this is Paul Reister, and I hope you find a good day to go fishing.
Thank you, gentlemen. This whole hour is pretty much devoted to fish and where you can find them in the Kentucky State Park System. Back with more after the break.
Skipper! Skipper! I don't know what you mean by
Skipper.
Skipper?
Skipper.
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 Hey, Skipper!
What?
Don't skip the life jackets.
Life jackets. You're right. Thanks for the reminder.
Water officers everywhere remind you, your life jackets got your back.
And the backing of everyone that wants you to come home alive.
So, Skipper, don't skip the life jackets. A public service message from your Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife.
I'm on to him, Kate. If he says 10, he's lying.
You poor thing.
It's mostly about fishing. He caught 10 fish in 10 minutes, or it weighed 10 pounds, like right.
Well, what about when he says you're a perfect 10?
Did I say it's mostly about fishing?
Your Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife reminds you, fishing's not about math. It's about fun.
And fudging a little if you need to.
Kentucky Fishing. Be honest.
It'll make a liar out of you.
We are back. My name is Charlie Baglin, and this is Kentucky Afield Radio. In the studio with me are Jeff Roberts, longtime park naturalist at Rough River, and state naturalist Ron Vanover with the Kentucky Department of Parks. Parks are a lot of things to a lot of people, but today we are trying our best to focus on fishing opportunity at our state parks.
Charlie, let me just sum up about the East. Yatesville Lake State Park. Of course, it has a small lake around it as well. Good fishing opportunities. I love to bird. And I know Jeff, my counterpart over here, loves to bird as well. We've birded together. I catch myself when I'm turkey hunting, writing down all the birds that I hear in my mind so that I have a list when I leave that day from turkey hunting. Undoubtedly, one of the best places to bird in the Commonwealth is right
Lake.
There at Yatesville Lake.
Yatesville Lake State Park. Make a note of that.
Absolutely. And as you come forward, you've got Jenny Wiley we've touched about, you've got Buckhorn, but you also got to think about Greenbow. We have a lot of great opportunities there. People forget that Greenbow has a beautiful lake down there. It has great fish. But that park also has about 3,300 acres of land.
Is that the largest of the state parks in the system?
It makes it the largest as far as state, park forested acreage land.
3,300 acres.
Yes, and as you come on over, we've talked a little bit about Natural Bridge. Carter Caves have Smoky Lake there where you can fish. You also have all those opportunities to explore the cave. There's canoeing opportunities. Then you work your way over. We've mentioned a lot about Natural Bridge coming this way. But then you get into the cultural side of things. I've often said state parks is a lot about culture. I remember often telling our naturalist, Jeff has heard it before when he worked for us, an interpreter is a liaison between the resource and the visitor. We do our best to concentrate upon the natural aspects of a park, the cultural aspects of the park, the historical aspects, and outdoor recreation. Fort Boonesboro. What a great place to visit, to learn about cultural and historical history.
Now, that is on the Kentucky River. What
Exactly.
county is that in? Clark?
That would be Clark
So
County.
That's a little bit east of Lexington.
Sure. That's a great place, eastern part of the state. But you know what? The West is too.
We're going to leave out parks along the way just because there are so many of them. But it's worth a visit to your website. And
it's parks.ky.gov. And when you get on that site, there's quite a few of our resort parks where we have our own blog sites. I hated to see Jeff leave, by the way, because he had a great blog at Rough River. So you can get on the individual blog sites where we write about wildflowers and different things we come across. And you can also go to stateparkapps.com, stateparkapps.com. And it's there you can download a program to your smartphone.
I like it. So you can just search for that in iTunes or the Droid Marketplace.
Absolutely, and it's got all the maps, trail hiking, identifies all the streams and creeks and that are involved with that park. Great application.
How can you live without one? I was looking that you can actually search the park for what you want to do. And if you want to boat, if you want to water ski, if you want to fish, it'll spell it out right there. You just put in the search criteria and you're there.
That's part of our phrasing that our marketing campaign director, LaDonna Miller, has mentioned. There's a park for that, and that seems to be the slogan we're using. If you go in there and you search for something, we've got a park for that.
What I like about Kentucky State Parks is that You don't find them in downtown Bowling Green. You don't find them in downtown Paducah or Lexington, or you find them out in the countryside. They're parts of the community there.
Absolutely.
They are part of that's where a lot of people from the community work and recreate. The food is good, and it tastes like local home cooking.
Absolutely.
You can't beat a Kentucky State Park.
You know, when you look back at the history of parks over time, there is a lot of contact with the local folks that live in that area. Charlie, I don't mind telling you, in the early 20s, my great-grandfather was the fiddle player at Cumberland Falls. Before it was a resort, before it was even a state park in 33, named for Mr. DuPont with the DuPont Corporation. In the early 20s, he would ride horseback, and he would ford the Cumberland River with his horse, and he would go within 200 yards of what we call the pour-over, or the waterfalls itself, was a little hotel, and he would play his fiddle for the guests that visited there. But it is a part of the Cumberland Falls State Resort Park history today.
Jeff, again, we are straying from fishing.
Well, that's okay. We're illustrating the value of taking a trip to a state park, and it's not just all about fishing. While there's great opportunities for fishing, it's important that we point out the other aspects as well.
We're sort of moved into central Kentucky and up and down, let's just call it the Interstate 75 corridor. How many can you count? Cumberland Falls, Lake Cumberland, Kincaid Lake, Butler? What am I missing?
You could put Dale Hollow in there.
You can.
You could also, you've got Whitehall. You've also got Sportsman's Hill. Many people forget about Sportsman's Hill, which is William Whitley State Park. Sportsman's Hill, Charlie's one of the KHLCF properties that was recently purchased.
KHLCF, that stands for?
Kentucky Heritage Land Conservation Fund monies that we used, which is the Nature Plate monies.
Those license plates that have the Cumberland Falls on them and the Bobcat, Cardinal, Butterfly. They helped buy that park.
They sure bought the Sportsman's Hill section, which is I'd say it's about 55 acres. And it's where William Whitley would do his horse racing in the late 1700s.
Did they go in they went counterclockwise?
He did that because he was defying the British.
As he should. But the story I'm told, people would stand on top of this hill, and from the top of the hill you could see the entire race course. All you do is to turn your body around and watch them.
Yes. And I know we're going to stray just a little bit, but just for Fish and Wildlife and people that's listening, we're getting ready to spray that field, and we're going to allow natives to come back for quail habitat. Just wanted to share that.
I thank you, and so do the quail. So do the rabbits and the songbirds and everything else that will live there in that habitat. That'll be great.
Now, speaking of Whitehall, I'll bring us back to fishing here.
Right.
Whitehall has a Finn's Lake, a fishing and neighborhoods lake, right next to it. And I used to go there. It's between Lexington and Richmond. When I was going back and forth for school, I would stop in there. The first day I ever went there, I caught a 7-pound largemouth.
Wow.
It's a good-sized pond. It's crystal clear. It's chock full of vegetation, and it's stocked with rainbow trout.
Ron is opening a map in case you're wondering what that paper. They're cheating.
Yeah.
You have to. There's so darn many of them.
There's a lot.
That's a recipe for great largemouth fishing, when you've got clear water, vegetation, and rainbow trout. I went over there several more times. I never caught another one that big, but I caught plenty of fish between 2 and 4 pounds. And this is just bank fishing. I mean, if you wanted to, you could put a kayak on it, but this is just bank fishing, and a great opportunity for bank fishing. I haven't been there in a couple of years, but if people will manage it right and practice catch and release, I think that could be a wonderful little public body of water for years to come.
At Pine Mountain State Park, is there fishing opportunity there?
Well, you've got the Cumberland River that traverses through there. There's also some smaller ponds like what you're talking about. There's one in particular up on the ridgetop that people fish, located within a mile or so of the lodge. And as you know, the Cumberland River plays an integral part of a lot of our state parks, coming from the east all the way down to the damming to create Lake Cumberland. Then it leaves, goes back down. People don't realize this. It makes a big turn through Nashville. It comes right back up again, and it's dammed again to make Lake Barkley.
The Cumberland River is to thank for several parks.
Absolutely.
In Kentucky State Parks, is there a set of benefits, for the lack of a better term, that when you go to a state park, you know you're going to have a place to park? You know you're going to have handicapped access. Can you elaborate on that, Ron, of what amenities you try to put out there for the visitor, that when they come, they have a little easier time of it?
You know, we're probably held to higher standards just because we are a state agency, more so than a private sector, in the fact that we have to provide ADA accessibility parking based upon the amount of parking places. And that's something we care deeply about. That's something we look into. If you look at any of our state parks, you will find a place for those with disabilities. If one is taken, I can assure you, park management will assist in any way we can to provide an opportunity for better parking for that particular person.
Handicapped accessible fishing piers have just been the delight of many, and you don't have to be handicapped to enjoy them. Mm-hmm. You can walk out there on your own 2 feet of your own accord, but they are for any and all people, but especially people who need a little extra assistance. That's the cat's meow. We have one at General Butler State Resort Park, and I'm going to just call that my hometown park, being from there. But I've seen this put up in recent years. It hasn't always been there, of course. But every time I drive by, there's always a car parked there and somebody on it. And so those are appreciated. Jeff, it wasn't probably that long ago, I had a couple of guys on from the Murray State University bass angling team, and one was from Louisville. And I said, well, where did you fish growing up? And he said, Rough and No Lynn. And how far a drive is that from Louisville?
Oh, a little over 2 hours.
Worth the drive.
Definitely. I grew up in Elizabethtown, just south of Louisville, and when I grew up as a child, stream fishing with my father and farm ponds and that kind of thing. But as I got a little bit older and got more serious into bass fishing, I learned how to bass fish on Rough River. What makes Rough unique is its presence of hybrids, and I consider it one of the best hybrid striped bass fisheries in the state.
Kentucky State Parks, the nation's finest. Now, we're highlighting parks on this edition of Kentucky Afield Radio because of the gold that there is to mine at Kentucky State Parks. Golf, tennis, swimming, shade, quiet, history, landmarks, geology, fishing, camping, and that just starts the list. I'm Charlie Bagman, and Parks of Western Kentucky, as our show continues next on Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Bagman, and this is my home address for the rest of the hour. We are talking about some of my very favorite places, Kentucky State Parks. If there is one near where you live, I'm sure that you, just like me, call it the park. Where I grew up in northern Kentucky near General Butler State Park, my sisters and I and everybody in town, we didn't call it Butler. We didn't call it General Butler. We just called it the park. And we knew because it's part of our life, part of our community. Ron Vanover is the state naturalist. Jeff Roberts is a past naturalist at Rough River, now is a wildlife educator with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And Jeff, before the break, we were highlighting Rough River and No Lynn. Let's pick up there.
No Lynn is, I mentioned earlier that it has a walleye run every year. But other than that, they're fairly similar. No Lynn's a little bit clearer. It runs a little bit clearer than Rough, but they both have all of the game fish that you would want to go after, Kentucky spotted bass and largemouth, and panfish and crappie and that kind of thing.
Go ahead while you got the microphone. Brag on your Rough River, because you were there for quite a while as the park naturalist. What am I missing, having not been there lately?
If you've never gone hybrid fishing at Rough River, you have to do it. There's some of the hardest fighting fish that you'll ever catch. And once you get on a school of hybrids, you're probably going to be sore the next day. It's fun, and not only is it fun and entertaining, it's a great way to introduce a kid to fishing. A kid would have a ball, especially when the hybrids get in what's called the jumps, when they're feeding on the surface, and you can literally throw anything. You can throw a gym shoe with a treble hook on it and catch a hybrid. It's it's
my type of vision.
It doesn't require a lot of work, but it's fun and it's rewarding. And if you've never been to Rough to fish for the hybrids, then it's something that should be on every fisherman's bucket list.
Ron, you used to pay this man to know, and he knows. Even if it's throwing a gym shoe with a treble hook.
Let me tell you, he's always, since I've known him, he's always had a great love for fishing.
Two other parks down in that general part of the state are Pennyrile and Barren River Lake. What are they known for from the fishing perspective?
Ask most people who bass fish what they think the second best lake in Kentucky for largemouth fishing is. They're going to say Barren. Number one being, well, collectively Kentucky and Barkley. Those are kind of in their own league. Those are world-class fisheries like we've already mentioned. But Barren River Lake, in my opinion, is the next best fishery for largemouth, and it also has a very good population of hybrids in it as well. Now, Pennyrile does have a lake. It's going to be bank fishing, but I've got a buddy who lives in Dawson Springs, that's where Pennyrile Forest is located, and he's a good fisherman. He goes over and bank fishes and catches a ton of 2 to 4 pounders from the bank. So another one of those less known opportunities for some bank or kayak fishing. And I kind of want to touch on that for a minute. Kayak fishing is something that has just gotten huge in the past 2 years, I'd say. And a lot of those kayak fishermen, they have their own tournament circuits, and they actually do fish big bodies of water. But as far as kayak fishing goes, Kentucky state parks have endless opportunities for kayak fishing.
Are there more parks as we venture west other than the few that surround Barkley and Kentucky lakes? Am I missing any?
Lake Malone?
Our district wildlife biologist there is named Rob Rold, and when I speak to him every week or two and he does a fishing report, I can hear in his voice his love for Lake Malone. And I've not been there, but it sounds like it's just one of those places you could just get lost in, and you go out there for an hour, and the next thing you know, you spent all day.
It's really a great park to visit.
Out there surrounding what I'm going to call our 2 Great Lakes, there are 3 state parks there, Kentucky Dam Village, Ken Lake, and Lake Barkley. Any other state parks in that general area?
Well, you've got Mineral Mound. You'd have Pennyrile, Jefferson Davis, Columbus Belmont, and Wycliffe Mounds.
Yes, he told me.
Audubon.
You've got Audubon up in Henderson, which was a great park. And by the way, just recently been working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife on securing a piece of property there, which we had talks about with KHLCF, and it was approved by the board, by the way, and that's going to be a 649-acre wetland that will eventually be added to John James Audubon State Park there on the Ohio River.
So the nature license plates, those are the plates that say Nature's Finest Autumn, again, have gone to add that property to that park.
20 years ago, I remember going across that bridge and looking over there and saying, boy, be nice if we owned that someday. As I look across through there now, and, here it is 20 years later, and I get a sense of pride when I look at that piece of property, knowing that it's got an active bald eagle's nest, it's got a great blue heron rookery. We're going to be able to double the size of that state park.
I can tell you're proud of that. It's neat to be able to see something and say, of what could be and actually see it come to fruition. And you're talking about John James Audubon State Park.
Yes, we've got a piece of property there. We're working again. It's in the premature stages. U.S. Fish and Wildlife has already purchased using BAP monies, but we've also been approved KHLCF to repurchase back from them. And this is just going to be a great thing. What a great naturalist, too, in John James Audubon. I mean, we could go on forever.
Let's sum it up. Looking at the clock, we're running out of time. But to sum up fishing and parks, I know there are a lot of parks that we didn't talk about, but all or most will offer a lake, a stream, a river flowing through it, an opportunity to get out with a fishing pole and have a good day.
Yeah. No matter what you're trying to do, no matter what you're fishing for, how you want to do it, whether you want big water in a 20-foot bass boat, or you want a small stream or a small pond in a kayak, the opportunities are there. Just do a little exploring, look in your area, get on our website, get the app, and take a look around, and the opportunities are there.
Last question. Do either one of you text and drive?
I do not.
Jeff, that leaves you to say yes, and you two will say no?
I try not to.
There's a big pause there. I try not to. That's almost a yes, but it's still a no.
It's a no.
Still a no.
Gentlemen, I appreciate you coming by and talking to us about parks.
Pleasure to be here today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That parks website again is parks.ky.gov, G-O-V. Put a park on your fishing list. And one of my favorite things about Kentucky State Parks and water, it's the Cumberland Falls Moon Boat, visible every full moon on a clear night. It is summer boating season. Make sure your life jacket's got your back. This is Charlie Baglin, and our time is up. Join us again in a week, and we will go inside outdoors again, right here on Kentucky Afield Radio.